Hi guys, I'm Matt Swartz. I am a former Northville student. Went to Northville first grade through 12. Somehow made it through and graduated, and now I'm out in the real world doing real adult things. Today I want to talk to you about what I'm calling powerful parenting. Right? How can we parent with confidence in a way that helps our children achieve their goals, but also does it in a way that helps them to feel fulfilled through that process. So we're going to talk about what it looks like to parent in flow. For anybody who liked my slides, and I'm going to go through some of these now, and I'll go through some of them in my breakout sessions. If you're tech-enabled, bit.ly/powerful parenting slides, or there's a QR code as well. There we go. So, introduce myself real quickly so it makes sense why I'm talking to you guys about what I'm talking to you. This is my beautiful family. This picture was taken like maybe a month ago. We have a brand new newborn little girl who's just 3 months old. I have a 7-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and a beautiful wife. I work at a place called Evolving Lives, which is my private practice. I'm a therapist. It is myself, it is my wife, and my colleague Alexander in the back of the room here. I have the privilege to be a therapist for over 15 years, and in private practice back in our area in Northville for about 11, lived and worked out in New York for a while. I was a prison therapist for a couple of years at Rikers Island for any of you Law & Order fans. If I can do group therapy for prisoners, then I can do pretty much anything. I do a lot of speaking and a lot of training. I am privileged to work with a group called the Hope Empowerment Coalition of Western Wayne County, where we're helping to streamline mental health services for Western Wayne County schools, include crisis management, peer support, and lots of other really cool services. I see Alice in the back over there. I'm privileged to work with Alice. And lots of other cool trainings and speaking engagements all over the place. I work with Fortune 100 companies, and I work with local small businesses, not-for-profits. And my goal is I do a lot of helping with high performers and leaders and helpers and healers, and a lot of that comes down to my story. So here's what I will tell you. I am so deeply grateful to have had a Northville education. It's very easy for me to think about if I had been in a different place, that might not have looked so great. I was a kid with mental health challenges, I had some ADHD, I had some anxiety, I had amazing support. I was diagnosed in 2nd grade. I got therapy in 2nd grade because the school system was able to see the challenges and do the testing and suggest solutions to my parents that I'm not sure they would have gotten anywhere else, right? And we all know that Northville has a particular view of what success looks like, right? We're all here as parents because we want to, and a lot of times, sacrifice our own needs for our children to have the happiest, most successful life that we can imagine for them. Is that right? Yeah. And along that road, we may need to evaluate our ideas of what success may look like in order to ensure that our children can live that life that we want for them. Okay. So, welcome to Parent Camp. Again, QR codes. Raise your hand. I'm going to make you do a little more work than Aaron made you do. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Okay, great. Raise your hand if you have a parent. Raise your hand if you think maybe your parents could have done something differently or better. Yeah, so universally, right, we all have at least one complaint about what our parents have done. And a lot of us are trying to do a little better, right? We're going to learn, we're going to grow, we're going to be better parents, right? That is a total normal process. And I just want to encourage that mindset that, it's important to evaluate on an ongoing basis how we're doing as parents and how we're showing up. If we want our children to be most successful and fulfilled, it's very hard to teach children how to be fulfilled if we are not. Does that make sense? So a lot of this work in terms of powerful parenting is making sure that we're taking care of ourselves first so that we can then teach our kids how to do the same. There we go, great. Okay, so when you look at the literature, there are 4 consistent top parenting fears, and I want you to raise your hand as I go through, and if one of these is your big fear, go ahead and raise your hand. So we'll start with hurting or not protecting your child. Who feels like this is their biggest fear? Okay. How about our child disliking us? Who's really scared that their child will grow up and they won't like us? Yeah, I see some hands for sure. not allowing our children to reach their full potential. Who's scared of that? Yeah, Northville, totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And who's super scared about repeating our parents' mistakes? Yeah. So these are some of the most well-researched biggest fears, right? So what about our goals, right? Well, we again, as parents, we tend to have four main goals, the biggest the research proves out. Number one is we want to raise healthy children. Number two is we want to raise happy children. Number three, we want to raise successful children. And number four, we want to raise connected children. What I mean by that is children that still want to hang out with us when they're 30, right? So how do we do that? Well, the good news is the research shows that there are a lot of really important and good ways to do it. The challenge is some of these may feel a little counter to how we were raised. So we may need to challenge some of our assumptions in order to get to the goals that we want to get to. So I'm a therapist in our community. Most of my clients are parents, leaders, business owners, high performers, and I do work with some teens. My wife tends to work more with kids. Alexander works a lot with teens. And I would say, if you boil all the work I do down to two cores, okay, it looks a lot like this. First, Matt, my child is in pain, and I don't know how to fix it, right, is one of the biggest things I get. But again, working in Northville, Plymouth, Novi, I also get a lot of, my child is not doing what I think they should. Help me fix it. Right? I think the first one in terms of going to therapy is pretty obvious. The second one, again, we see a lot in these sort of high-performing communities and contexts, right? So in helping people through this, one of the keys is an understanding of emotional intelligence as a parent. Who here understands the term emotional intelligence? Right, so this is, last 10, 15 years, we've talked a lot about this. Maybe you've had a training at work, maybe you've done an online course, something like that. I break down emotional intelligence into four key categories, okay? And we talk about what's called the parallel process, which is to say we want to be aware for ourselves and aware for others. So awareness, right? I'm aware I'm having an emotion, maybe what that trigger is, and then I'm aware that you're having an emotion. So this might be our kids, right? Then there's motivation. I'm aware of what I care about and what motivates me, and I'm aware of what my child cares about and what motivates them. Next is communication. I can label and effectively communicate my emotions. And then I can help or label your emotion and help you communicate about it, if that's your kid, right? And then finally is regulation. I can process and work through my emotions. And then second, I can tolerate and work through and help you support yours, right? Obviously, these are all skill sets that we can develop, and that's a big part of really good therapy. I think the last thing is really important, right? If I'm honest, my greatest weakness is my ability to tolerate my child's frustration, right? My child gets frustrated, my child gets overwhelmed. I have to work really hard to stay in that moment with them. Oftentimes, I either try to fix it for them, or I try to make it go away, right? And it's those kinds of responses that then diminish our child's ability to learn these skills. If we fix it for them, they don't learn. And if we avoid it, they don't learn either, right? So one of the most, again, if I boil all of this down, one of the most powerful things that I teach parents is how to tolerate that emotional distress so they can be in it with their children and learn how to do that, right? But it's a process. Okay. So what are the frameworks? Great. One of the frameworks that I really love for doing this is something called flow and flow state. Who here has heard about flow state before? Okay, maybe half of them. So flow state is defined as we often call it in the zone and in the zone. It's that state of consciousness where we feel our best and we're performing our best, where all the chatter drops away and we feel like we're totally there, right? So maybe I'm working, and for me, I'm with my clients, or I am out in nature, or I am working on a presentation or speaking, right? There are places where I feel totally dialed in, totally plugged in. There are probably 3/4 of this room, if you had to get up on the stage, you'd be freaking out, right? Me, this is my happy place. I can do this for hours, right? So we all find flow in different places. The research shows us, you can see it on this chart, the bottom says skill level, and the top and the side says challenge level. So flow is found when there's a challenge that meets our high skill, right? So if we have really high skill, but it's not a big challenge, that's called relaxation. And that's nice, but that's not flow, right? Your children just sitting there doing nothing isn't very challenging, right? But high challenge and high skill, that's where we find flow, right? Now, if we're in a situation where it's a really high challenge and we have low skill, that's called anxiety. We've all been there, right? So what we're looking to do for both ourselves and our children is plug them into experiences where there is that sufficient skill level, but there's also that sufficient challenge. And that's going to be true as a parent, right? What we're looking for is to identify this challenge being presented to me by my child. Do I have the skill to face it? If not, learn the skill, right? Is this too challenging? That's where I need to learn that skill, right? Or is this right where I need to be? Is this something that I can learn and grow from? And it's okay if not every moment is like that, but if it isn't, then that's our cue to learn and build those skills, right? So for me, when I had my first kid, when I learned I was having my first kid, long story short, I used to have panic attacks, and then I didn't. And then somebody told me I was pregnant with my first kid, and I had my first panic attack in 6 years. And I totally broke out, right? Oh my God, I'm gonna ruin them, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I called my best friend, I called my dad, I called my sibling, right? Needed them to talk me off the ledge, my poor wife. That in that moment, that challenge felt like it so deeply exceeded my skill level, right? That I knew there was going to be a lot of catching up to do. But I knew, because I do this work, the areas of my life that I'm in flow and how that feels. And so I set myself a mission. And I said, I'm going to figure out how to make parenting feel as in flow as talking to my clients, as getting up on stage, right? Because again, there are people in this room, if you had to do therapy with clients, you'd be like, oh my God, that's crazy. How do you know what to say and how do you know what to... Well, that's easy, right? So if I can make something that's hard for other people easy, then we can too, right? So my goal is for all of us to learn those skills and how to parent in flow. Now, just to be clear, I have a 3-month-old, my oldest is 7. I am not a perfect parent. I mess up all the time. I'm happy to talk to you about Thursday morning, where my 4-year-old could not shut up about how itchy his coat was. And even though we need to get in the car, and he doesn't understand time, or schedules, or the fact that I have a client at 9 o'clock, we don't have an extra 15 minutes to talk about how itchy the coat is, and process through his feelings. So I got angry, and cried, okay? I'm a normal human being, right? And I'm able to process that experience. I'm able to apologize to him in the car ride. I'm able to take that time where we are sitting and work and understand what he's feeling and why he's feeling it so we can improve that experience tomorrow. And that comes from all the hard work that I did starting 8 years ago, in that moment that I knew that I was getting into a big challenge that I was not prepared for. Make sense? Seem fair? So I'm going to help guide you guys into flow state in a couple of different ways. There's some different levels of flow to think about. The first level is, where in my life can I easily get into flow, right? Maybe there's some art you do, or a sport you do, or some kind of challenge you love, or some kind of work you do where you can find flow. That's the first place to start. Do that more. Build that flow state in your life. Help your life become more and more higher percentage flow, right? From there, we get the second level, which is how do I navigate into experiences where the challenge level meets my skill level, or how do I build the skill necessary or find the challenges necessary to do that? And the third level is we can dimensionalize this a little bit. The research shows us there are some really key factors of flow. Now, I would love nothing more than to spend 2 hours with you and go through all of this really deeply, but I got probably 15 minutes left. So I'm going to give you guys a little smattering. We'll get more of this if you come to my breakout session. You can get more of this if you want to talk to me. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. So here are what the research shows, and in my sort of unique perspective, the 6 key foundations of flow. So how do I know if I'm in flow as a parent? If you're in total flow, you will feel presence, totally dialed in, peace, partnership, potential, purpose, and play. Ooh, play? Yeah. So what does that look like? Presence is engagement in the present moment, fully dialed in. I'm not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, none on my phone. Peace, I feel a sense of ease, stability, and lack of stress. Partnership, I'm connecting, I'm collaborating, I'm caring. Potential, I feel a sense of self and significance as a parent. I feel a sense of purpose, of my ability to make a meaningful impact. And finally, play, I'm able to create joyfully with curiosity. The more we can embody these, the more we can teach these to our children. Who would love if your child reported to you that their life was filled of this? Yeah, I got a couple of hands. I know you wanted to raise your hand, but you're feeling tired. I get it. Okay, so let's break this down, and I'm going to give you a little tips of this, what we can do in this limited time. So let's start with presence, okay? So I often say that there's only a few key things I really need to teach people, and this is one of them. So your conscious experience, your awareness, your existence in the world can be broken down into three categories. Who's heard of mindfulness before? Right? So mindfulness is trying to teach us, yes, how to be fully present, but it also teaches us about this state of awareness, okay? It's more simple than it sounds. So first is perception. We take in sensory information from the outside world. Something we hear, touch, taste, think, or hear. I didn't go through all of them, but you know what I'm saying. See, right? Our senses. Does that make sense? Perception, right? So we take in data. Then the second step is we interpret that data through our past experience, okay? So I'm walking down the street, I see a black dog. Okay? And then I decide what to think about that black dog. Okay? There's two different versions of me. One version of me grew up with two dogs and really loves dogs. The second version of me was bit by a black dog when I was a kid. Right? So now I go to respond. Right? The first version of me that loves dogs is going to move closer to that dog, ask the owner if I can pet it, and make a new doggy friend. Right? The version of me that was bit by a dog is going to cross to the other side of the street and stay as far away as possible. Same dog. Right? Different me, different interpretation. So most people come to me and they say, Matt, I want better results. I want to respond differently, right, to my situation. Well, I tell them in order to do that, we got to back way up. We got to work on this interpretation stage. This is the key. Rather than forcing ourselves to respond differently, if we can change our interpretations, right? That second version of me knows, yes, I was bitten by a dog, but most dogs aren't going to hurt anybody. I may not decide to become his best friend, but I can casually walk by without a big deal. Does that make sense? So a lot of our key is working on this interpretation. And mindfulness is widening the gap between perception and interpretation, which is to say, I can stay just looking at this thing or hearing at this thing or experience this thing for longer without trying to judge it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's a big part of presence, right? A second big part of presence is an issue that has been really challenging for especially the last 15 years. If you've read the book Anxious Generation, this is a really good kind of outline of some of this. 15 years ago, 2010, the iPhone was invented, mass-produced, and changed our lives forever. Who feels like they've ever been in this kind of moment before? It's okay, I have. We all have, right? I know I'm supposed to be tuned into my kid, but I am. Either a text message came in, or I'm on social media, or I'm viewing a news story or something, right? Being present, a big part of being present right now is figuring out how to tame this really challenging part of our lives called infinite information in your pocket, right? It's a really tempting focus. I view this, I think this issue is as bad as cigarette smoking in the 1950s, right? Everybody was doing it, it was no big deal, but then it turns out, we're giving everyone cancer and everyone dying, and it's probably not a good thing, right? Your children need you to be engaged, right? It's an essential, or when they're 14 and they're playing video games or whatever, you go, well, I can't really tell them not to do, this because right? So if we need to model that good behavior, right? Now, again, you've already had 20,000 people tell you this, so you know this, and I know this, and yet I still get sucked in. And the reality is it takes a lot of skill and training to be able to do this effectively. This thing is really addictive and really challenging. So don't feel bad as a parent, because you are dealing with a challenge that has never existed before. That's a challenge both for you and your children. So as you learn how to navigate it more easily, you can help your children learn how to navigate it more easily. Okay? So some tips for deepening presence. Number one, join your child in their world. Okay? What do they want to play? Where do they want to go? What are they thinking about, right? Rather than just trying to direct them into yours. Does that difference make sense? Number two, daily stillness or meditation. Who in here has some kind of practice that causes them to be still for even 5 minutes of the day? Yeah, that's what I usually see, about a quarter of the room. My recommendation is building some kind of practice. Throw the phone away, laptop away, turn the TV off, and just sit still. It's okay if you want to do it outside, if you want to listen to some calming music, if you want to lay on your couch, if you want to go for a walk in the woods, right? Some kind of practice that allows you to be quiet and still. When my children were young, I knew this was already going to be a problem, and so we instituted, we have about an hour and a half of quiet time a day, right? This happens normally when they get home from school, around the weekends in the middle of the afternoon. And what this is whether we're together or separate, we are doing very low stim activities together. And you can't, no, can I get on the TV? Nope. Can I get on my, we don't have iPads, but, can I use some type of technology? Nope. No, this is still time. So we're reading, we're playing blocks, right? Starting with this when they're young allows it to become more and more easy, more natural when they're older. Third, we want to reduce multitasking and electronic use, right? We want to be doing one thing at a time. We want to teach our children to try to do one thing at a time as well. If you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. If you're cooking, cook, right? Don't wash the dishes and watch TV, and cook and watch your phone, right? These are, again, it may seem like, oh, this is no big deal, but being able to practice this in a low impact setting allows us to be able to do this more successfully in really more challenging situations. And finally, build and grow energy. What that means is you need to eat well, you need to sleep well, you need to breathe well, right? You need to do the basic core essential functions, eat, sleep, breathe, and move your body. And these are the things that generate and cultivate energy in our body. We don't have that, we have nothing else. Okay, I want to talk about peace real quick. I'm just going to check the time, so I'm going to go over. Great. So peace, right? This is about safety, stress, and stability. The good news is in Northville, Michigan, most of us are very physically safe, and we don't worry about whether somebody's going to come and punch us in the face tomorrow, right? So we're not talking about physical safety, we're talking about emotional safety, we're talking about stress, and we're talking about stability, okay? If you come to my breakout session, this is the majority of what I'm going to talk about. This is my model for moving from stress to thriving. The bulk of my work is with anxiety and trauma. So there's this 5-step process where I recognize, reduce, release, refuel, rewire. Come to my breakout session, I'll teach you how to do that. This is really helpful for any kind of stress, but also, anxiety for yourself, for children who are dealing with anxiety. Okay, but here's the deal, right? Where does stress come from? Stress comes from change, right? So at the left here, any type of change. This could be a small change. This could be your phone's ringing. There's some kind of change in the environment, or it's a new school year, or my kid has a new friend, or I have a new job, or so change could be small or big. As that change piles up, it becomes stress, right? As that stress piles up, it becomes painful. As that pain grows and grows, I want you to think about me taking a stick and bending it and creating a massive amount of tension, and eventually that stick is going what? Break. That's called an injury, right? You know what that looks like if your child's climbing a tree and falls off the tree and breaks their leg. You know what that looks like, right? The problem with emotional and cognitive injuries is we can't see them, right? But we can see them when our kids are reacting and responding in certain dysfunctional ways. That is your clue that there's an emotional injury there. They're not being bad kids. Something is hurt that maybe needs to be fixed, right? If we don't address those injuries, they become fear, that builds up into anxiety, that can build up into panic, depression, anger, substance use, all sorts of crummy, difficult things, right? So a lot of the time, people don't get to me until the fear or after portion. And I want to, in this work, when I'm speaking, I'm trying to target people who are down here in this early portion and try to prevent you from getting to that injury in the first place. Or to identify that maybe our kids have some emotional injuries that need to be repaired. I'm talking about parenting right now. What the number one goal here is I want to help you identify that there might be emotional injuries. How do I know that? If a challenge comes to me that shouldn't be a 6 out of 10 or above, but it feels like a 6 out of 10, then it's not about the situation. What does that mean? My kid comes to me and has this horrible social issue, but I find myself so stressed and angry about it. That's probably because there's some kind of social, emotional injury for you that this situation is bringing up, right? Your child is having trouble performing in a class, right? And you're getting really angry. You find yourself trying to, why aren't you? You should, you start, it's escalating. That's your key, that there may be an emotional injury for you under the surface tied to this kind of situation, right? And that's where you may want to get some outside help to help you work through that, so you can help your kid work through that for themselves. Okay, so we do this by, and I'll explain this quickly, but again, this is something I can explain more. There are different stages of how we deal with challenges, right? By the time people come to me, most of them are spending most of their time distracting, right? There's an issue, I don't know how to deal with it, I'm gonna watch Netflix, drink some wine, numb out, right? And obviously that's problematic. It works short term, but it doesn't work long term. Then we teach people how to cope, right? How do I deal better with my feelings? I learn coping skills, I learn communication skills, and that's all well and good, but I'm still just managing the problem. Then we move into healing, where I'm trying to unearth those injuries, address those injuries, change them, right? Again, if you think about a leg, right? I'm going to cope with this injury. I'm going to get on crutches. I'm going to, try to avoid difficult spaces. Well, you can't do that forever, right? At some point, you really want to set that bone and heal that injury. And then finally, that allows us to move into growth, right? Imagine what if a little kid breaks their leg and we don't fix it, do they keep growing? What happens to that leg, right? It's going to end up being really nasty on the other side. The same is true for emotional injuries. If we break something emotionally and then we keep growing, right? Well, okay, we kept growing, but it's built on a shaky foundation that's going to be problematic, right? So some of the challenges we encounter with parenting, the majority of the time there was an emotional injury we experienced as a child that has gone unaddressed, and then we built up our parenting skills on top of that, but then our kid comes and pokes us, and then the whole thing falls over. Does that make sense? I know it's not what you like to hear. It'd be nice if I could just give you 5 tips and you could leave and be the perfect parent. But the reality is that is not the case. And that was not the case for me, right? The reality is I'm not talking about anything that I didn't experience. I went to therapy as a kid. You'd be like, oh, we sent our kid to therapy, it's perfect now, everything's good. Well, no, there were things that didn't get addressed, right? So when I started getting angry and overwhelmed, when I was checked out as a parent, when my wife was dealing with postpartum depression and I wasn't able to engage, that was my cue that I needed to go back to therapy. I went back to a kind of therapy called EMDR, which is this kind of deep level trauma therapy that's really helpful. But I just say this to be vulnerable and say, it's okay, guys. We all have some kind of emotional injuries. Because again, who was a child and somebody said to them, it looks like you have an emotional injury. We would love to address that for you, right? That didn't, in our parents, our generation, that didn't happen, right? That's new. That's the past 10 or 15 years where we're taking our children to therapy to address that, right? So most of us didn't get that, so we have to go backwards. Okay, so how do we create peace? We want to establish routines and structures, right? And this can be very simple things. What do we do in the morning? When my kids get home from school, they put up their coat, they hang up their backpack, they grab their lunchbox, da-da-da-da. Why do I do this? Because when I was a kid, I would just throw my crap over there and throw my crap over there and run in the house and do all of that. And for those of you who have teenagers, you know what that looks like, right? Well, if we can slow down and go through a routine in the process, then after a couple of years, it becomes an automatic habit. They don't even think about it anymore, right? So there's a lot of different routines and structures, and again, I can get super detailed about that. Second is organic growth, which I want you to understand is you can't rush your child through their growth, right? There's a process that unfolds. Your job is to be present for that. Next is emotional regulation and healing. I talked about that enough. And then simplifying and processing. Most of us have overly complex lives that don't leave enough time for us to process and distill the challenges and information that we're receiving. So we can try to simplify our lives a little bit and increase our ability to process. That's going to aid us greatly in helping our kids. Think it sounds to be fair? We got a couple minutes left. Partnership. We all want to connect, collaborate, and care with our children. One of my favorite quotes, kids are not attention seeking, they're connection seeking. Your child desiring your attention and you feeling frustrated because you have these other things over here that you need to deal with, that's not a bad thing. That's your cue and your signal to get more dialed in and to understand that you can grow your capacity for connection with your child. So what can we do? How do we nurture partnership? Things like simple daily check-ins. Am I taking 5 or 10 minutes a day to check in with my kid, right? Taking one-on-one time, right? It's really important to go on dates with your kids single so that nothing else is going on. You can dial in with them. Build belonging. One of my complaints about my childhood is my parents were a little weird, and we didn't necessarily have a ton of family friends. So I had to learn a lot of socialization myself, right? So one of the things I really encourage parents to do is build a network of friends where they feel like they belong, where you feel like you belong, so that you can teach them those skills, right? If you can find a group of people you belong with, that you will teach them how to do that. Don't expect they can do it if you don't teach them, right? Co-teaching and co-leading, I want you to understand that your children are here to teach you as much as you're here to teach them, maybe more. That your children are here to lead you just as much as you're leading them, maybe more. Obviously that evolves. My 1-year-old, not necessarily as much, but my 7-year-old, man, he's got a lot to teach me. And then finally, collaborative caring, right? Really teaching our kids that our job is to be kind and nurturing to each other as much as possible. Okay. Potential. This is all about, I'm going to try to go quickly here. This is all about building whole children, okay? We want to focus on their inherent worth. We want to praise their efforts, not their results. It doesn't matter the grade they got, what matters is that they tried, right? We want to explore and support their struggle. Are we checking in each day? Every day of your children's lives, they will be struggling somehow, okay? We want to check in on that with them, okay? We want to build unconditional love. This is a really hard one. We want to reduce shame, punishment. We don't want to do that as much. We want to reduce control and power struggles. Also, our job, we like this concept called lawnmower parenting. Who's heard of this? Right? Helicopter parenting, we know. Lawnmower parenting, we go into the field and we mow a path for our children to blaze, right? If they don't get to cut that grass, they don't get to learn, right? So we don't want to prevent pain. We want to encourage their ability to learn for themselves. This concept is really important. The idea of multiple intelligences, right? So your child is going to show up maybe 2 or 3 of these types of intelligence very high, 2 or 3 of these medium, 2 or 3 of these low. Your child is not going to be good at everything, and they shouldn't be. So our job is to help our children find their unique gifts and skill sets. I'm existential, interpersonal. I can't do spatial. I can't organize a room for crap, right? That's okay. We all have different challenges and gifts. In the normal school system, we really push logical, mathematical, and linguistic intelligence, and some of our kids are not high in those areas. Some of them can build some skill, but some of them will never be masters of those areas, and that's okay. And we want to help them find a place in the world that allows them to focus on their unique gifts and strengths. Okay. I'm going to, because I want to tie up here, moving forward. Well, that's why I got quotes. I'm going to skip purpose because this one is very easy for Northville families. What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? How do we do that together? Right? We're generally pretty good at that. But the one that I want to highlight before we go is play. Right? Really encouraging curiosity, creation, and joy. Okay, how do we do that? We want to rediscover our play. Do you have something that's really fun for you? If not, find it. Usually we have to go back to our childhood and go, okay, what was really enjoyable and fun for me, and how can I recapture that? I've been doing comedy for a very long time. That's one of my playful places. So find yours, right? We want to find structured and unstructured joyful play. Structured is, we're going to play this game together. Unstructured is, hey kids, what do you want to do, right? Allowing them to find how they're going to play. Again, letting them lead their learning. My kid, 3 years old, just one day said, I want to learn math. Cool, great, we're going to do that. 3 months later, he got bored. Didn't want to learn anymore. Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to the next thing. Let them guide your learning as much as you can. We want to create an adventure together. When's the last time you did a creative activity or went on an adventure with your child collaboratively? Really important. And then focusing on daily joy and gratitude. I'm going to leave you with this. This is a poem called On Children that I end up reading to my clients sooner or later by a Sufi poet named Khalil Gibran. I apologize if I cry, but I'm really crying okay. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children's living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, he loves the bows that are staked. You are giving your children an incredible gift by being the vehicle through which they're able to experience the world. Support them with love, with courage, with growth, and that starts with us, right? The more we can care for ourselves, the more we can bring that to our children. I thank you so much for your time. Pastor Love.